So I tried meal prepping for a week. If you're new, you've stumbled upon the channel and you don't know what I'm all about, I have cooked my own food since I was a child. I'm a huge proponent of cooking my own food fresh and eating it. I don't eat out at restaurants. I don't buy anything processed or pre-prepared. I cook all of my own food. And I also work at home, so I have the opportunity to cook everything fresh as I need to eat it. I don't need to cook things in advance and then take them in little mason jars to work, as is the trend. But that is the trend. A lot of people are really interested in meal prepping and getting into it, so I decided I would check it out and see what I thought about it. So let's look at what I ate for the week. So I started off the week by making smoothie bowls. This is basically smoothies that are not blended. So the mason jars that one must use when one does meal prep. I mean, really, you don't have to use mason jars. It's just, these are really nice for things like smoothie bowls. You can see the layers of everything and it's pretty. Starting with, this is whole milk yogurt and probiotic. There's like a little bit of honey in it. I can't find whole milk, this brand, without honey, but it's barely any, so it's okay. It's not too sweet. I have some pecans and pumpkin seeds and some sweetened shredded coconut. This is like the one added sugar element I have in the smoothie bowls. So I just put a cup of yogurt in each mason jar, and I'm adding some blueberries. These are fresh blueberries, and I like the blueberries because they stay well the longest in the fridge compared to other berries. And then I'm just adding the seeds and the nuts and the coconut, and this is where I should have stopped. I'm like packing it in to try to fill the gaps between the blueberries with yogurt, but it's like, even doing that, these were filled way too high, and it's really hard to eat them with a spoon without making a big mess your first couple bites. But I learned after doing this, so live and learn. But yeah, you just layer it, put whatever fillings you want into your smoothie mason jars, bowls, and twist the lids, and there you go. Breakfast. These were my breakfasts for the first 3 days of my week, which is why there's only 3 of them. Can I get a bite without making a giant mess? Nope. Okay, for my lunch for the first 3 days of the week, I'm making a couscous salad. This is couscous, if you've never seen it before. It's instant couscous, and that's pretty much the typical version of it you're going to find. I got this at the bulk section at Winco. It's very, very tiny pasta. So you basically measure a couple cups of it into a bowl. I'm adding some salt to season, and then you wake it up by just adding some boiling water. Typically the ratio is 1-to-1, but I didn't want this salad to get too soggy or wet, especially when it's sitting around in the fridge for 3 days. So I added like a cup and a half of water to the 2 cups of couscous. Just incorporate it a little, cover it, and let it sit for 5 minutes, and you got couscous. Then I went out to my little teeny tiny garden outside my apartment, and my cherry tomatoes are doing super well. Like, this is the first time I've ever had major success with cherry tomatoes. There were a lot of ripe ones to pick, so I got some cherry tomatoes from the garden, as well as some fresh parsley. Parsley is always doing very well in the garden, and some fresh mint, and also from fresh oregano. Poor thing was getting old. And this was my bountiful harvest. Not quite enough for the salad total, but it'll supplement everything nicely. As you can see, this is my spread of everything else I have for the salad. You'll notice I've got store-bought tomatoes as well as the ones I picked. And herbs all chopped up. That's my parsley. And then I got a block of feta. I prefer buying it in a block because it's usually cheaper. And then 1 cucumber, de-seeded and diced. You really want to de-seed that because the moisture will make it soggy. A can of chopped olives and the zest of a lemon and a very finely pulverized clove of garlic. This should be shallot or like red onion, but I didn't have those, so white onion and some lemon. Then I'm making a vinaigrette from some red wine vinegar, pepper, and lemon juice. Going easy on the salt because the olives and the feta have salt. Adding the garlic and the lemon zest and some olive oil. Ideally, I'd be streaming that in while stirring, but you can't do that while you're holding a camera with one hand. But hey, it worked. Look, it's emulsifying. Yay! And then I'm adding the herbs and olives and everything else basically into the bowl. Just combine that lightly and then add that couscous. I would ideally chop the cherry tomatoes a little bit smaller, but when it's sitting around in the fridge for a few days, that's going to stay a lot fresher if you keep the cherry tomatoes whole. So I tried to use smaller cherry tomatoes for this. And there's my 3 couscous salads in 3 little containers, all nice and pretty on the table. It actually made 4 servings, but my partner ate 1 of them. Then for dinner, I made butter chicken. I have a video up already on this channel showing in detail how to make this. So this is just a brief overview, but it's one of my favorite Indian dishes. And I put 1 serving on a dinner plate instead of Tupperware containers because I frankly just ran out of containers. Like those are the 2 last containers that I had. So when you meal prep, yeah, you need a lot of containers. But I made this fresh the first day and I just ate the serving on the dinner plate the first day that I made it and put away the other 2 for later. And I love butter chicken. It's so good. And then for the second half of the week, the second 4 days, I'm making chia seed pudding, and these are chia seeds. And this is actually my very first time using chia seeds, eating chia seeds. I was pretty excited. Got these at the bulk section of Winco. They're black chia seeds, and they basically work by puffing up. I'm adding honey, vanilla, and I'm using regular cow's milk. A lot of people make this vegan by using fake milk, but I like cow's milk. So I'm using low-fat milk spiked with some cream. And you just pour the chia seeds into the jar, and then you pour the, milk product into the jar. And I like adding a little tiny bit of honey. That's like a ½ tablespoon of honey and vanilla just to flavor it a little tiny bit. And you stir it, and that's basically it. That's how you make the chia pudding. And it winds up being sort of like tapioca pudding, only slimier. It's sort of like a mix between tomato seeds and tapioca pudding. So if you don't like those things, you probably won't like chia pudding. But if you like those things like me, you'll like chia pudding. And yeah, this is after about 5 minutes. And then this is after overnight in the fridge. So this is a great overnight pudding to make. These are blackberries that I harvested just from bushes growing in my apartment complex. They're all over the place in Washington State. So you're a fool if you buy blackberries at the store as far as I'm concerned. And there they are, lovely little chia blackberry puddings for my second breakfast. For my second lunch, I made ratatouille. It's a summer staple of mine. Very delicious, very nutritious, and I have a video also about that one as well that I already made. And yeah, I usually prefer to have it with toast or pasta, but those things do not reheat well, so I'm using brown rice. And as with the other meals, I'm packing away 3 servings of it in Tupperware containers for later with some fresh basil from the garden. And the serving that I made then, I'm just eating fresh. And then we got bacon in a pot. What could that possibly be for? I think it's a soup base. I prefer to buy my bacon in bits and pieces chopped up like this, especially if I'm going to make a soup. It's a corn chowder, by the way, because that bacon is cheaper. Anyway, celery, onions, potatoes, very, very common ingredients for any chowder. You want to sweat those onions and the celery like you do when you make any kind of soup. And then you add the cobs of the corn without the kernels on them and the potatoes and some milk and some cream. Again, I'm just spiking the milk because it's low-fat milk and I want it to be whole milk. And you simmer that until the potatoes are tender, and then you remove those corn cobs because you don't want to eat those exactly. And then you add the corn and simmer that until the kernels are just cooked. It takes about like 5 minutes. And then what you want to do there is you separate out some of the soup into a food processor or blender and you puree that. And that's basically going to thicken the soup. You can do the whole soup pureed if you want, but I prefer it chunkier. My partner and I both love this soup, by the way. It's one of our favorite soups, and I have to make it like multiple times every summer because it's delicious and also good leftover. At the very end, you add a little tablespoon of butter in there and swirl it in, just because it makes everything creamier and tastier. And there you have it, delicious corn chowder in mason jars. spilled some in my lap. So the week was generally pretty good. I have a few pros for meal prepping and a few cons for meal prepping after my week-long experience. So for the pros of meal prepping, one of the pros was that I did notice on the days when I didn't have to cook, so this isn't true on the days where I had to meal prep, basically cook a bunch of meals, like 12 meals in one day, but the days where I wasn't cooking, yeah, I noticed I had noticeably more free time on my hands. And not only did I have more free time because I wasn't cooking, but I also had more free time because I didn't have as many dishes to wash, and my brain space was freed up a little bit. I didn't have to think at all. And like I plan out my meals in advance in my planner, just so that I'm sure to eat what needs to be eaten before it goes bad and everything. But like having literally the same thing, like 3 days in a row, 4 days in a row, it really takes away all the thinking and the decision fatigue. I know exactly what I'm eating for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the next 3 or 4 days, and I just grab it out of the fridge and eat it in the case of the parfait or the pudding or the salad, or I just grab it out of the fridge, microwave it, eat it. So very little thought involved. Another pro with meal prepping was that because I am losing weight at the moment and I am, meticulously counting all my calories, it made that part of the process so much easier too. Because again, if you're eating the exact same thing 3 or 4 days in a row, you've already done all your calorie calculations, and the same calorie calculation can just keep applying for the next 3 or 4 days. So again, don't have to be thinking about calories and doing a bunch of math every single day. The other pro about meal prepping, and I actually experienced, the reason why people meal prep is, if you find that you have to be away from home when you would ordinarily be eating a meal, you already have a meal to go. I wound up going with my partner to the doctor the last morning of my meal prep week, and what do you know? I had a little mason jar of chia pudding that I could take with me and eat in the waiting room while he was having his exams. So that was incredibly convenient and nice. So for the cons of meal prepping, one was that I like to cook for myself and my partner, and because he was not also meal prepping, and he's so much, he would not be able to meal prep exactly because of his poor health. Sometimes he won't eat anything for a whole day, sometimes he'll eat 3 meals in a day, sometimes he'll only eat once a day, and then he also gets these really specific cravings, and he just, nothing else will do. I must have, this particular kind of ravioli with sauce, and if I can't eat that, I'm just not going to eat anything at all. And it's not a defiant, I don't want to eat anything. It's more just he's literally not hungry unless it's for this very specific thing. So when I'm cooking for myself and for him, he might one day be like, ooh, I have a craving for burgers. And I'll be like, ooh, yeah, burgers sound good. And I'll make burgers. And I'll still work it into my, my plans, my schedule and everything, and it all works out. But I kind of like that. I like sharing meals with him. I like planning meals with him. And I couldn't exactly do that with this meal prepped week. We did eat some of the corn chowder together and some of the couscous salad together, but the rest of the stuff I made just for myself. And yeah, if you have a partner or a family or something, you have to either make everybody meal prep with you, or you have to meal prep and then they do everything separate, and then it's kind of lonely. The second con of meal prepping was, as I mentioned, the days where you don't have to cook, it's all nice because you don't have to cook, but the days where you do cook, you're cooking a lot, a lot more than I would ordinarily cook. I'm cooking basically 12 meals at once or 14 meals at once. Just a lot of meals at once. So on the days when I did cook, it was an awful lot of cooking. Overall, I did less cooking during this meal prep week than I would have done during a normal week, but still, I felt it on those days that I did cook. The other problem that I had with my meal prep week was that I got bored. And I do eat a lot of repeat meals throughout my normal week as it is. For example, I made a salmon pot pie for myself and my partner a couple days ago. We each ate a quarter of it, and then today we each ate the rest of it as leftovers reheated in the oven. So yeah, it's we had the same thing, 2 lunches, Not quite in a row though. It's like I skipped a day so that I could have a little more of a variety. And again, I only had that twice. I'm not having it like 4 days in a row. And I found that, yeah, with the second half of my meal prep week, the part where I did 4 days in a row, I got so sick of everything. Like, I liked the chia seed pudding, I liked the ratatouille, and I liked the corn chowder, but not 4 days in a row, like exactly in that order. And then the other problem that I have with meal prepping, and ultimately this is why I just never really did it before, is that there's so many dishes that just are not good leftover. Especially take the ratatouille. I love eating ratatouille on toast. I like eating it on toasted, like French bread. Freshly toasted French bread, not leftover French bread that's been sitting in the fridge for 4 days with ratatouille spread on it and it gets all stale and soggy, right? So I had to have ratatouille. I also like ratatouille with pasta, by the way. Freshly cooked pasta, not old pasta that's been sitting in the fridge, and when you re-microwave it, it gets like really soggy and overcooked. So you see where I'm going with this, right? The 2 ways that I like having ratatouille the most, I couldn't because they're not really good leftover, they're not really viable. I mean, I considered doing the pasta leftover, but leftover overcooked pasta just makes me sad. So I had to go with brown rice because that's the only thing that like still tastes good and pretty much the same microwave the next day or days later. And it just not the most enjoyable way to eat ratatouille. Like I was really wishing all of that time that I could have it on freshly toasted French bread. And yeah, you just need to find dishes that are good leftover, genuinely. Like the chia pudding is genuinely good leftover, corn chowder is genuinely good leftover, that couscous salad is genuinely good leftover, although I prefer it with pasta, like noodles, spiral pasta in particular. But again, like if I'd done it with spiral pasta, it would get a little soggy, the dressing would kind of soak into the pasta a little more and make it eh. So, you're kind of limited when you meal prep on the kinds of foods that you can cook. But all in all, it wasn't bad. I think, you know, the pros and the cons kind of cancel each other out, and depending on what kind of a week you're having, like in the future, if I have a very busy week ahead of me, I very well may go ahead and meal prep. And hopefully that gave you guys some meal prepping ideas if you're interested in getting into meal prepping, or just if you already meal prep but you want some more ideas of things to meal prep because you're tired of eating the same thing every day. If you do try any of these, let me know how they worked out, and bye! Thanks for watching. Since this channel is small and not monetized, you can best support it by subscribing and by liking, commenting, and sharing the videos. You can also buy food and cooking items from my Amazon store to give me a cut of the profits at no extra cost to you. Also, add me on Facebook for recipes and more. Bye, food lovers!